So whenever anything is introduced into the environment, I have a routine I follow to do a check. And I am testing everything against something called the CIA Triad, and it has nothing to do with the government, but it probably has something to do with the government, but they say that it doesn't. Okay. So it's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at these systems, because all we really have, like as a school, I mean, I don't have a security team. I'm not going to go out and try to hack something and break some kind of US or international law. All we have are terms of service and observable information on our clients and on our network. So you have this package, you want us to use it. Do you have some kind of auditing? Do you have some kind of documentation that tells us how it works? And if you don't, and you're asking us to trust it, then it's up to us to check it and see if it's doing anything that's weird. And if it's doing anything that's weird, we form questions and try to get answers. So that's really how it goes. So I'm going to jump into this because the main point of this webinar is I want to present some of these topics. I have a few conversational points, and then I want you guys to take over and just talk about what this technology looks like for you at your schools, and what you think about it, and what you think your plans are with it in the future. Okay. If you notice a tech failure or somebody trying to get in that I'm not seeing, let me know. So I've just reviewed the CIA Triad is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And I'm gonna start with integrity because it's the most, in this case, it's the most entertaining. So it's early in the morning, so I want everybody to have the most entertainment up front. I've done a lot of integrity checking with the data that's stored on the computer. And in terms of integrity, the client is storing data, but it's encrypted. So it's not really unlike anything else that's being stored. So I decided to do some checking in the client. Now, when we look at this is a Google chat. I know it's kind of small. Can everybody see this okay? Just to get started here. Let me see if I can go to the next page. Okay. So this is a Google chat, and on the side, I'm looking at the chat in developer mode. And when I come over here, you'll see that this word okay is in the chat. Now, what Google Chat does is it is basically randomly generating IDs for divs and the other containers. So it is really difficult for something malicious in your browser to scrape this information and copy it. So they have baked in the security. So Google said, we know people are using Chrome. They're having private conversations in Google Chat. We don't want anyone to be able to just copy it with some fairly simple scraping software. Now, if you want to know how the scraping works, I have a video that I made a couple years ago where I use a browser-based plugin to scrape a bunch of final sites from different schools. I scrape their faculty lists and create like a mailing list a bot can use to start spamming them because they didn't lock them down. And it's really not that hard to do. I'm not even that good at it. If I were better, if I were like 20 and angry and had a lot of time to program, it would be pretty easy to do. But Google has locked that down, and they've made it pretty difficult because chat to chat, person to person, the structure changes. It's not predictable. You would need the algorithm that's generating these IDs in order to be able to have any chance at making it work properly. Now, you can do it. You can scrape all this stuff and filter it, but you're looking for, if you're attacking something, you're looking for low-hanging fruit. So if you're out there scraping and you hit something like this, you're going to go on to something else. You're going to try to find something easier. That's the whole point. So Google has baked in the security, and this isn't really about the implementation. This is about the concept and the planning. Google baked it in. They built it in from the core. Now let's look at how ChatGPT handles the same thing. So this is a ChatGPT chat that I'm having with the AI, and you can see here that this is not sophisticated. It literally just puts them in paragraph tags. So you can rip the entire chat with a fairly simple browser plugin, which means a simple malware installed in the browser can rip the entire chat history. So this is bad. I don't think this is good. Now, let's just say that we're talking about like just the classroom. I'm not too concerned about this. I am not concerned if a student's using this or a teacher to work on their lessons. I'm concerned about an HR person or head of school, a CFO using the system to work through a problem that should be confidential, and it's open like this. Now, possibly a paid version doesn't have this problem, but again, the deployment of this indicates that the security was not baked in. Okay. The people who built this system are obviously very intelligent. Some of them probably used to work at Google, still work at Google, still work at Microsoft. They have access to the framework that lets you generate ID tags randomly, just like we saw before, but they didn't really implement it. And my guess is they didn't implement it because it would slow the output down. So in this way, the output can come out faster and you can get the typing feature, and it feels more like a conversation. But this is definitely a concern for me because I don't see that the security is baked in this implementation. So if I were to build a policy around this, I would say, good, classroom use, fine. Don't talk to this thing about banking. Don't let this be used like in your C-suite without some additional security controls. So head of school, CFO, HR, none of those people should be using this at all. In the United States, we buy software to help calculate financial aid. You have to put in a lot of information. I can definitely see an AI being used to help run these calculations. But an AI running these calculations in the browser, for example, for something like financial aid, would also be too sensitive unless you can be certain that the information has a deeper level of security than we're looking at here. And so let me jump out of this just a second. Sorry, I'm trying to get my my video to play. Can you guys see this? Okay, so there's no audio here. I just want to show you how this works so you can know that it's not a lot of magic. Because sometimes I get that, like, oh, well, this is too complicated. It's really not that complicated. But there's an upside to all this that I will report in the end. I just want to show you that it's not complicated. So all I'm doing here is opening the paragraph tag and editing the text. It is really easy. And although you can do this in Google, it is significantly more difficult. Now, here's a couple of cool things, though, that I do want to point out, and I do think this is very interesting. You'll notice, and I'm just going to pause it here, In this exchange, it tells me the number of CISSPs are 130,000. Now, what I do here is I actually change 130,000 to 110,000. And then I ask it to tell me 2 questions down. I ask it to tell me, if you take the number of CISSPs and add 10, how many would you have? It actually takes that number, 130,000, and adds 10. So it's doing that exchange where it's looking at the text value that it's given me and turning it into a mathematical value. Very cool. I go back and change 130,000 to 110. It ignores that and still gives me the correct answer. So I ask it twice after I've manipulated it. And I want to say that that is very positive because it means that it's not really paying attention to the stored information. It is going out and getting a unique value and bringing it back each time. So it's checking its value and bringing it back. And that was a question I had that wasn't really answered. Like, when the AI is learning to deal with a person, is it also using past conversations and using the content of those? And I don't feel like, based off of this and a few other tests, that it's using the content. I think it's using your language pattern. Does that make sense? So that's very positive, that it's not using stored data to create a current answer. The reason that is positive is because it is a deterrent against what I call temporal-based manipulation, where you would go back in time into a log, change some data, and then it would impact a result in the present or future. Now, this kind of thing happens in databases when people hack them, and normally you have controls on a database that will flag it up and say, this was changed, you've got a mismatch on your time and date stamps. We don't have a time and date interaction with the AI, so there's really, it won't tell you things like, you know, if you ask it what time it is, it's not going to tell you, at least this version won't. So it's not doing that. So anyway, it's easy to manipulate, but at the same time, in terms of its actual deep like data retrieval process, this doesn't impact it. This would mostly be for a malicious actor to trick somebody to install something in their browser and then go from there. And I don't want to I don't know if this will load. It may not. Okay, so I think it's blocked. So openai.com, I went to it the other day, and it's actually an AI website, at least whatever came up. It's an AI website hosted in Russia that looks like OpenAI, the OpenAI project. So I was sitting there like, okay, if you can put something malicious in the browser that steals information, and you're just walking around the hallway saying, hey, install that chat plugin on OpenAI, and somebody goes to OpenAI dot whatever, and they don't go to the right one, and the OpenAI project hasn't purchased all the URLs. What if they go to some just malicious page, they install something that you recommended, but it's the wrong, it's the wrong URL? They easily could get an OpenAI implementation that works using the API and the plugin that steals all their information all at the same time. So they could actually get a positive result from using the AI, and they could have their information stolen. That's a win-win right there for somebody. So these are all the things in terms of like controls that that I'm thinking about. And that may have been fixed. I haven't checked it in a few days, but do the openai.com, .net, .org, all the common ones, and make sure that there's nothing, malicious out there using those URLs that are not part of the official project. Because if you see how my brain's working here, I'm thinking like, I'm trying to think like somebody who's looking for that low-hanging fruit, who wants to make a little bit of money quickly off of a product that has some initial popularity. Okay, And then here's the upside. As I said before, the chat GPT does not reference the output in the browser. And it seems like such a small thing, but it's actually such a big thing. This actually covers a lot of security issues. And I don't know if this was by design, or if it was by design, I think it was more about the interaction with the person, because the way they've implemented this seems to be mostly for speed and not security, for natural communication versus data security. Okay. Confidentiality, we'll jump to the C in the CIA triad. I had a conversation with the AI and I asked it about its terms of service. And I encourage everybody to ask the AI about its terms of service. It knows its terms of service. You don't have to read the two-point font to try to figure it out like you do with Apple and Microsoft, where Apple says if you're late on a payment, they're going to take your home. That doesn't happen with this. You can actually ask it questions. So it says that data is typically collected from a wide variety of sources, and it's pre-processed to remove any personal information. Now, it doesn't say that it always removes personal information. It says data is usually collected anonymously. Usually collected anonymously. Okay. So from a risk management standpoint, again, classroom, fine. Grades and behavior, maybe not. We need to really think about this. And here's kind of a sample of how it stores data on the client. Now, the reason I use the client is because it was more stable than the web version and I could see a lot more data. But it is logging quite a bit of information about our sessions. And this is mostly metadata and information that you would get with any service. But as a user, I have a login and I have a user ID, a number that you can find in these tables. So that means that it is authenticating me, and somewhere out there in its cloud, it's saying Tony is a user and his data is coming in and we're going to transact with him. So it's transacting information and it's logging time and date and other information about the session. So it does have the attribute of me being the person that gave it something. It knows it's me. It's supposed to strip it away. Now, that seems like a really good idea, and that seems like a baked-in piece of security. But when I look at it in terms of a legal framework, like the GDPR, it starts to conflict with certain things that most providers are supposed to do if you're using the tool, let's say, in a work environment, or if you're using the tool in an environment where the information isn't just personal. Meaning, I can't, like, if I'm working and Jim is an employee in my company and I'm working on something about Jim, I can't opt his information into something that isn't confidential. I can't just throw his information out. I can't opt his privacy away from him. Does that make sense? And this kind of thing happens all the time with unsophisticated products. I'm sure all of you have had issues where you've had some kind of breach or something, or somebody left something on the copier, dropped a USB. I mean, we all have to be careful of these things. And it happened so much over the last 2 decades that we have all these rules and frameworks now. Okay, so I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to quickly, this is a GDPR article 17 and 18. the data subject, which would be you or me, we're supposed to have more control over our data. So we're supposed to be able to audit our data and have our data deleted if we need it to be. Okay, that's really what we're saying here. All right, so I'm going to present some questions and then I'm going to open it up for conversation, but I just want to throw the questions out there first, and then I'm not really going to have an opinion. I just want to hear what people have to say. So if all attribution is truly removed, how could I request any management of data I've contributed to the system? So if my identity is stripped away and I put something in the system, how can I make sure it's erased? Would the system have to define my data as a public conversation that it overheard? Is that how you get around it? That it's like a public square and it just absorbed it. And I openly knew it was a public square. I was told you have no expectation of privacy here. Where's the option to tag my input as confidential or sensitive? Why can't I chat? And then if I want to work on something and get something private, why can't I flag that so it goes into a different container so that later I could remove it? So it's kind of less management. I have to choose what gets removed before I put it in. I have to flag it. So I just think about those questions. Here's the scenario I wanted to ask you about. I use ChatGPT to work out a calculation for a bridge I'm building. The solution's unique. How do I know it will not be incorporated into a competitor's results later on? So my conversation with the chatbot says the information is pooled and other chatbots can use it. So when I'm chatting with AI and you're chatting, we have a different AI session. Our information goes in, it's pooled. And if I can't erase this input, would the system be GDPR compliant based on this very simple construct that I've put into this conversation? So I'd really like everybody's thoughts on this, if you don't mind, just for a few minutes.
Right offhand, I think yeah, you've hit into a problem that the pooled data, while it's anonymous, there's not an expectation of privacy to it. I would think that while that if the same or similar questions were asked, then your workup and your the session in data that you provided and worked through would be available to the next person who put in a similar string. That's my guess.
Any other comments? Come on, guys, it's early in the morning for me. Some of you, it's evening. You've been awake, you're ready to go. I'm loading up on coffee here.
Yeah, it's almost 9 o'clock at night here. I'm struggling on.
Well, what do you think about this? Like you use it to build something proprietary or to work something out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because your data isn't, from what I'm aware of, that the actual words in your data isn't necessarily stored in the model. The model is like a mathematical approximation of what's happened. Like, so for example, if we look at just shut my door. If we look at the image training ones, so DALL-E, for example, right? So DALL-E has petabytes of image data that fed into it, but the actual model is only like tens of gigabytes, for example, right? So that actual image data isn't in there anymore, yet the mathematical model of it is. So I guess the question is, you can't recreate it exactly. So I mean, this is all for for courts to decide. I guess at some point in time. So it is fuzzy. I mean, so I just asked because I know it keeps a history of your chats, right? When you log in, whatever device you log into, you can see the history of your chats on the left. So that history is stored in the database somewhere. So I just asked it. I said, if I delete one of our chats, does it get deleted from your training data? And the answer was no, deleting a chat will not delete it from the training data. The training data has already been processed and cannot be altered. And what I take that to mean is that while the words themselves and the ASCII characters aren't stored, they have been fed into the neural network, and the model's been updated with that conversation or something. That's kind of how I read it without actually looking at their privacy policy. So all of that said, it's kind of abstract. Stepping between the concreteness of how is it implemented and how does it run, but the practicality of it stole a trade secret is something else, right? So I don't know in the end.
And I think again, this just comes down to like this concept when you're looking at this from like just a risk management standpoint, it's just controls and who needs the control. Does the teacher need this control? Probably not. Does the student need this control to do research? Probably not.
Right, probably not.
But again, what I recommend, like right now, today, if I go out and have a meeting, am I going to tell my CFO or my head of school that they can use this product? I would not.
Right. So, for example, you wouldn't ask it if to rate your password strength.
Correct. But what's funny is the client has like an old school password checker that it downloads onto your system and checks against a dictionary of just plain text passwords. So I think that's kind of funny. But I was like, come on, come up with something cool to tell me if my passwords are good, not something from the 90s. Okay, so availability, and then I'll be done, and I want to hear what you guys plan on doing with this thing in the future. So for availability, I just put this up here because this is what I see like most of the day. The only thing I want to say about availability that's I think important is I've seen a lot of stuff on LinkedIn lately where people are kind of pushing PD programs and things to buy about how they just are experts at ChatGPT. And when I ask them how much downtime they have and they say they've had none or they don't respond, I'm just a little wary of their product. Because if you've been using this thing like aggressively to learn about it, it's been growing so fast, it's had a lot of downtime. It's not a criticism, it's just been a fact. So, so I would say all things being equal, the free version of the tool is not very reliable. Okay. And this was the only thing I've put out to my school so far, that it's not very reliable. And that it creates some inequity if you were to assign it to be used. So if it's a tool by choice, that's fine. But if you tell all the kids like, hey, I want you guys to go home and generate a poem with this tonight, as of today, I would not do that because half the kids are going to come back and say they couldn't get on. So this is something I think we need to be aware of in the short term. Also, the system has switched to a cap per user in a certain amount of time. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it happened to me last Friday. I was working on it and it said, you've asked too many questions or you've used too many characters. And it made me wait an hour. So I think that they've kind of hit a wall with how much they want to invest in hardware expansion. So Microsoft has put in $10 billion. When I started doing my analysis, I tested its packets and the server and all of that. It's sitting on a very big Azure cluster, probably more than one, but at least the one I'm using in the United States. So it has loads of resources. Okay, so it's got the infrastructure. It's got the money's there, the infrastructure's there. For them to slow us down with input leads me to believe that this product is going to be replaced soon with something different, something we haven't seen yet. And if you're working in a school and you're working with teachers, my only caution here is if you push really hard with this name, ChatGPT, and it goes away in 6 months and comes out with something better, it is going to be very hard to get buy-in a second time around if it's rebranded or if the interface has changed significantly. At least I found that so many times working with products that go through a major upgrade and the interface changes, and then teachers are like, "Oh, I can't use this. You know, we did all our training on this, and now this is shifted." So my only concern here, and this is my prediction, and I could be completely wrong, is that whatever planning we're doing now will be irrelevant in 6 months to a year. So I would start piloting all this stuff, but I really wouldn't do any PD until June or August, like going into the next year. And I'm only saying that because this doesn't make sense. They've switched to a cap per user in a certain amount of time with a $10 billion investment in a massive Azure cluster. So it just seems like they have the engine to make this thing grow whenever they want. And they've taken the old product and they've said, you know what? We've put most of our engineering team on next version. So this version, just maintenance team, and we're not going to spend any more money on it. Okay, we're over here now. And so that's my feeling. Now I could be completely wrong. There's no evidence of that other than what I'm seeing and just kind of my experience. Like I've been working with Microsoft products for a long time, like I'm sure many of you have, and Google products. And when I was younger, I would get really excited with the beta products. They would come out, I would use them, be really, really excited, get everybody trained. And then in 6 months, they were gone. And it was wrapped into something else. So I've kind of slowed my roll a little bit when it comes to some of this stuff. So this is just a prediction. I have no idea if it's correct, but I feel good, and I'd put at least $10 on it. Okay, I'd make a $10 bet on this. All right, so I'm probably wrong. So in a year, everyone can join back in, and we'll do a follow-up webinar, and you can say things like, "Remember when you made the world's worst prediction?" or other insults. I'll take all the insults about how I was wrong, and you know, everything's fine, and the PD we did in April is still all valid in September, and the service is fine. And I actually hope that's the case. I mean, I'm cautious because I have a small team, and if I do any PD and then the product goes away in 3 months, I'll be lobbying for 6 months to do another PD. Okay, so my quick summary before we get into just the group chat is security should be baked in. I don't feel like it is. So I don't feel like the security is baked in. I think that opens it up to malicious attacks and malicious use from bad actors. I'm not saying the product's bad. I'm just saying it's a target right now. At least this version of the product, I believe, is low-hanging fruit for anybody that wants to take advantage of it. They need to add data tagging. If we can't tag, it doesn't matter if things are stripped away or not. We need to be able to say, this is confidential, this is a trade secret, this is private. And it needs to somehow be stored differently. I don't even care if it's processed a little bit slower. There must be a way to tag it so that if it helps me solve a problem, somebody down the road can't get that same solution for something that's confidential, or that's a trade secret, or something I've invented. There should be a way to say, this is just mine. Maybe it means paying for it. I'm just saying that it doesn't seem like it's there and it should be. I think the system is auditable. I think that it could be compliant because it has log files, but that needs to be further developed. In case there's a security incident, we need some way to audit its use, at least its basic use. Was this person using the AI? Were they not? Was the AI running on the network? All of these things need to be worked out. We need more auditing functions for an implementation that would be used in the business side of the school. For the education side of the school, again, I'm not too worried about it. And I'm assuming that if we allow the service in something like GoGuardian, we can at least audit the fact that the service was used and who used it, even if we can't see the data. So if you have some type of security apparatus, GoGuardian, Cisco Umbrella, something that can do some basic logging, I think that would be enough. But I would do something if you have the option. I always think it's a good idea. You never know, like a parent, there could be an argument where a teacher says, I think the student used the AI, and the student said, I did not. If you can pull up a log and say you were using the AI, that would help with that argument. Or you know what, the student wasn't using the AI, they wrote that themselves. Because there's a downside to letting kids use tools that you can't audit. The students don't have to use them, but the teacher could feel like they did. And I think it's important to be able to reconcile those types of arguments. I don't think it's currently stable for equitable access within a classroom, but I think it's getting there. So again, just be mindful of the fact that if you're having outages or delays and you were to assign it in mass to a group of people, a percentage of them will not be able to complete their work. So if there's an assessment connected to that, it could be bad. Simply saying, hey kids, you can use this, and if it doesn't work, here's another option. And there are some other options out there. I've been comparing the writing to the paid version of Grammarly, and that's a completely different review, probably in a month or so. But I can tell you the paid version of Grammarly to some degree gives me better output. I just have to work a little bit harder to get there. So there are multiple tools. So if you want to implement it, again, the control here is let's use it in the classroom, but if there's an outage, this should be explained to teachers and students. If there's an outage, here are your alternatives. All right, I have one thought on plagiarism, then I'm done talking. If students are using it, or teachers or anyone, if you use the MLA standard for a personal interview, then you should be fine for documenting your interaction with the AI. You can take the entire output, put it in an appendix in the back of the paper, and then cite it whenever you want. It's really easy. So you do your conversation, copy and paste it, put it in your documents, you're good. And then it can be cited. And this is a very easy standard. The IB recognizes it. The AP recognizes it. So I think for everything except maybe psychology. So it's good and it's easy. And as somebody who's working on the kind of the tech leadership side, I'm not going to be down in the classroom making these arguments. I'm just going to make a quick suggestion. I want people to be able to say, that makes sense. Let's run with that. So this seems like it meets the standard. I could be wrong. If you go to owl.purdue.edu, they have all the different interview standards. I think this one meets the standard.